This new Warlock build is the true Threadling master. Every powered melee we use, we're going to spawn in 3 Threadlings to do our bidding, and this just adds to our AOE powered melee that also unravels an entire area of enemies. We also can get a super in less than 15 seconds, as you can see in the gameplay, and we are locked 15 power level under in here in the legendary campaign. So this build performs very well. Oh, and by the way, we are also unkillable with this setup. I have tried and tested a few different Threadling builds, and I just keep coming back to this one. I find it more engaging to play. I think it's quite a bit stronger than others thanks to that powerful melee, and it also spawns way more Threadlings because the powered melee doesn't have a cooldown on how often it can make them. Every grapple powered melee spawns in 3 no matter what. You will also get so many supers, generate so many orbs of power like you see on screen here. I had my 2 buddies run this with me as well, and that's over 360 orbs of power generated in one single seasonal activity, which is still locked 5 power level under. The healing within this build is also on par with the restoration from the solar subclass, and it lasts for 8 seconds long. So since our powered melee is so strong, and with the extra 3 Threadlings adding more damage, and with the fragment that buffs the Threadlings damage as well, we have a melee that can guarantee us a kill even when we're 15 under the power level. Needless to say, this is one of my favorite builds to play in Destiny 2 right now on the Warlock, and I feel like this is what Bungie had in mind with this Grapple system. If you do enjoy this video or find it helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button for me, and let's jump into it. Now for the Broodweaver subclass, our super is Needle Storm. You're going to be getting this bad boy literally every 10 to 20 seconds if you played the build correctly. This is a very strong super, so that's awesome that we can use it so much. For our melee is Arcane Needle. It's our only choice, but this is kind of important to the build because when you throw this needle out, it unravels targets. We have 3 charges of it. Now when we unravel that target and kill it with our weapon, it will guarantee a tangle to spawn in. So Arcane Needle is what you lead into a battle with or a fight with, so a room of enemies. You just throw your needle out, tag one enemy, and then kill that enemy to spawn a guaranteed tangle. We're going to take advantage of that tangle with our grapple melee. When grappling to a tangle, it immediately recharges your grenade energy. So this can be that tangle that you created, or it can be a tangle point that maybe a hunter created on your team. During and shortly after grappling, your melee attack deals area damage and unravels targets. So we get the unraveling on this powered melee, and it deals area damage, but we're gonna beef this thing up even stronger on the Warlock, which is just crazy. For the aspects, we only have 2. Weaver's Call is the first one. Cast your Rift to weave 3 Threadlings and deploy any Threadlings you have perched. So just another way to create Threadlings with a build. And then Mindspun Invocation. Your grapple melee spawns 3 Threadling eggs. Now this is on every grapple charged melee that we do. There's no cooldown on this. You can spam it on a single enemy, you can spam it on multiple enemies. So in a matter of 10 seconds, when you melee something 4 times, you're gonna spawn out 12 Threadlings that either attack that target or other targets, and if there's no targets to attack, they will return to you. So this is where we get into the true Threadling master, whereas you can play this build and survive in difficult content, but on top of that, have infinite Threadlings going out and doing your bidding. And it makes that AOE powered melee that much stronger because you're combining the already powered melee that has AOE with 3 Threadlings and then adding the fragment that empowers them. Now for the fragments, there are 3 fragments that I think is mandatory for the build that I really like, and then the 4th one can be changed out, and I'll show you 2 options for it. First, we have Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy. This is just to help us get that grenade back when we use that grenade, and we might not have used a tangles or something like that. We just let off with our grapple, right, and went into a group of enemies. Well, this just helps get the grenade back quickly because we're dealing that AOE damage that procs this, and our Threadlings that we create from our melee proc this as well. Next, we have Thread of Warding. Picking up an orb of power grants Woven Mail. Every time we do a melee, we're going to create 2 orbs of power. By picking those up, we're just going to get that Woven buff, which means we get a 60% damage reduction on top of everything else. And since we have infinite healing with the build, this just makes us this unkillable meleeing spawning Threadling Warlock, which is really crazy. Next, we have Thread of Evolution. Threadlings travel further and deal additional damage. This combines with that melee. It combines with our Rift Threadlings, our Super Threadlings, just to do extra damage and travel further and faster. Now the 4th fragment is up to you. I was going with Thread of Propagation when I was running solo. The reason for this is powered melee final blows grant your strand weapons unraveling rounds. This is the grapple melee. Powered melee will proc this, so you have unraveling rounds all the time, which means I could start out a fight without using my melee. I could just use my strand weapon, shoot at something that would unravel them and then kill them, and that would spawn my tangle for me. That's if I am running solo, because there's no way within this build to suspend enemies. This is not a suspend build, this is a Threadling build, and since I don't have a way to suspend enemies, I was running Thread of Propagation. If I was running with a team with a hunter that's diving to the ground, or a titan popping barricades and suspending targets, then I swapped this one out for Thread of Mind. Defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. That would just feed that rift, add more survivability to the overall build, and more Threadlings from that rift. So those are your two options for the last fragment. I had 100 resilience in the gameplay, which you guys always want to try to hit 100 resilience. I did have 100 discipline, although it's not needed because you're just going to spam the Threadlings off of your melee. And then if you can, push that recovery up as high as possible. I had 50 recovery in the gameplay, but that would just help you get that rift back quicker. So if you're going with unraveling rounds as your fragment, then obviously you want to run a strand primary in that primary slot to take advantage of it. I was using the Final Warning sidearm, which I'm really liking. It does some great burst damage on any type of targets and good ad clear. You could go with something like Quicksilver Storm, completely up to you there. Now our exotic that we're going to take advantage of is Karnstein Armlets. The perk here is Vampire's Caress. Melee kills instantly restore a large amount of health and continue to restore health afterwards for a short duration. This is basically a restoration ×1 from the Solar subclass, if you know what restoration is, but it's a heal over time. It's that strong and it lasts for 8 seconds. So that means you only need to get another kill within 8 seconds to keep this buff up all the time. Another nice thing about it is it's just melee kills. It doesn't need to be a powered melee from the grapple, doesn't need to be your Needle Storm melee, powered melee. It could just be a normal punch melee on something if you really need to proc Karnsteins to stay alive. Now for the mods on the build, on the helmet, we're going to take 2 Ashes to Assets and 1 Hands On. The reason for this is both of these proc our grapple and our powered melee, so we're going to get double the super energy, and as you saw in the opening clip, we almost get a full super off of 1 melee, which is just great. On the gauntlets, we're going to take firepower and heavy-handed, so both of these are spawning 2 orbs of power every time that we do that strong melee into a group of enemies, so you're just this orb generating machine. And then we also have impact induction. Causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. You could run this in there to get that grenade back quicker, or you could run grenade kickstart. Every time that you use that grapple over and over on a tangle or a grapple point, you will proc grenade kickstart. So grenade kickstart will work in here as well. I was using a strand weapon surge, so I didn't want to use my charges on a grapple, so I was running impact induction, but either one of those would work. On the gauntlets, I just had a void resistance, a solar resistance, and a melee damage resistance just to tank everything coming my way. You could trade those out and do whatever you want. On the boots, I had absolution, reduce all ability cooldowns each time you pick up an orb of power. Innervation, reduce grenade cooldown each time you pick up an orb of power. So both of those are feeding our grenade, and then absolution is feeding all abilities. And I also had that strand weapon surge in there just to get a 10% bonus to my Final Warning sidearm. On the class item, I'm running double bomber just to feed back into that grenade, right, if I do need it. So every time I drop that rift, I'll get a good 30% of my grenade. And elemental time dilation just to make my armor charge last 15 seconds to feed that strand weapon surge. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. It's a really fun way to play the Warlock. You're still creating so many Threadlings. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.